Hello, everyone. We are here in Santa Clarita, California with Angela Adan.
Super excited about this podcast. Topics that we're going to be covering have been on my mind for quite a while, especially one of them. And yeah, so we're just really excited to be sitting here with Angela. I'm going to go ahead and let her speak just a little bit about her background. Because maybe a lot of you know who she is and what she does, but I'm sure there's some of you out there who have no clue somehow.
Explain your huge history of animals very shortly.
In 2 seconds. I started off as a vet tech. I worked at a lot of different veterinary hospitals for 14 years. And I was going to go to school to be a vet. And then I sort of changed courses. When I moved to Santa Barbara, I learned about how many dogs are dying in shelters every day. And so I got very heavily involved in dog rescue. And I've been doing that for 11 years now. And then, with dog rescue, you kind of learn very quickly that there's a huge lack of education in how to manage these dogs and how to help these dogs. So I got into the training world and just tried to soak up as much knowledge as I possibly could.
That's very concise. Given your everything that you encompass, your life is so full. You don't have to look very far to see how full that is. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's a brief little history. Mm-hmm. And we'll just, if you're interested in more, just look up deserving dogs on Instagram. Or what? Do you have a website?
No.
Okay. Freddie has a website.
Freddie has a CBD company. Mm-hmm. So I also have a pet CBD company.
Right.
Yeah.
Great.
But I think before we start, I just want to say that, and it might make me emotional because thinking of you and your work makes me emotional because there aren't a lot of people in this industry that have the level of devotion that you have. Like we were talking about last night, how our lives and yours revolve around the dogs in our life completely. Everything in the day is mapped around the dog or the dogs. And just the level of selflessness and devotion that you have it's incredible. So
thank you. From the time I wake up, when my feet hit the ground, my whole day is, what can I be doing for the dogs in my home? And a lot of dogs outside of my home. And it all kind of started because I used to be a really shy person and couldn't even hold conversations with people. And when I was young, if someone just looked at me and tried to talk to me, I would start crying. Mm-hmm. That's how sensitive I was. Mm-hmm. And the first time I walked a big pack of dogs, was the first time that I felt confident in myself. Mm. And from that moment, I was like, I need to give back to these dogs. They just gave me something so big in life that no one else has been able to ever give me, that everything I do is just to say thank you to them.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
that is so beautiful.
Yeah.
That is a hell of a gift.
Yeah.
So I guess I had never heard that. So it makes a lot of sense why you have just literally devoted your every waking moment to a degree to them. I was confident as a kid. I didn't get that. But, with Cole and I, like she just said, our life is dedicated to the dogs that have been in our lives. Juno, Stitch. We don't have tons, obviously. I've been without a dog for a year now, which isn't the norm. It's kind of the total opposite of you to a degree.
Or any trainer.
or any trainer, to just have one dog. And at the moment to not have any. And, but that being said, it's whether we would choose to go to a movie or whether we would choose to do like whatever activity, it does revolve around dogs. And I guess this kind of bleeds into one of the topics, but treating dogs as kids, like so many people treat dogs like dogs, and some of them treat them like children. And some of them are kind of like in a little mix. Did you get it? Here we go.
That's better.
Okay. That'll be cut out.
Yeah. So some people have dogs and they treat them like dogs. And they, I guess, what am I trying to say with this? They'll not shape their life around them, which is totally fine. But I guess there's like this weird zone where people will treat their dogs like dogs, but then they'll also coddle them and treat them like a child. But they'll also leave them for long periods of time, 12 hours sometimes, they'll not be attentive to when they're barking, not be attentive to when they're whining. And so they'll treat them kind of like dogs in that sense, right? But then in other situations or moments, they're very much treating them like a child. So it's like there's this weird dichotomy where it's like, for us, our experience with dogs is like, if a dog needs us, if they're barking, they're whining, they're having a meltdown, we are there for them 24 hours a day, right? We're not going to leave them for 12 hours at a time. Again, to each their own. Even if you did that, like if I had to leave a dog for 12 hours, like because I worked 9 to 9 or something like that, I'd be getting up well before 9. I have to be at work, and I would come home and I'd be with them from 9, and it just like that selflessness goes away. So I guess, like in your experience, because have you always been that way with them since you began working with dogs and they kind of gave you that gift? Have you always steered in that direction, or do you feel like over time you have kind of morphed into incorporating them more into your life and being them more, being there for them more like a child, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Like that level of sacrifice, but then also kind of treating them like, it's like people are split. They're not picking one or the other, right?
Yeah.
They're
It's like you're taking the best of both.
yes, they're like, yeah.
When I was 14, I got my first dog that was like my dog. And it was a little Shih Tzu named Danny. And he was like my best friend. And I used to get invited to go to like friends' houses and stay overnight. And I'd be like, well, what's Danny going to do that night? Like, no, I can't go anywhere overnight because my dog. And I mean, I would leave the house and he would just like wait for me by the door, and I'd get home. And that was like the first, like, he was my best friend, So I think that I've sort of always been that way from the time that I had my first dog. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like growing up, we had dogs. They were dogs. And so I've had the experience of having both sides. And mind you, those dogs growing up, they weren't like mine. Like they were shared amongst the family, right? And I got to work with them and interact with them and stuff like that. But yeah, I guess it really changed my view when I got Juno, because he was like, I guess you could say he was definitely my first dog. And like, he was everything. He was absolutely everything. So I've had that experience of having both. So I empathize with both kind of, with both experiences in life. And like my mom, she's one who also has gone through that because she had dogs, because that's what we had growing up. Like we had Pyrenees in the backyard who were like attached and tethered in the wintertime and so on and so forth. Just kind of classic. And now she has dogs and they're her life, you know?
Same thing with my mom. She grew up having German Shepherds chained in the backyard. And when she was a young girl, she would go out and sit in the dog houses with those dogs, even though she was told, they were dangerous. And so she promised herself, when she was older and she had her dogs, that they would never be treated like that. And so I learned from her the proper way to treat a dog, to have them as family, and they get well fed and walked every day. And they spent we had Rottweilers growing up, and if we went to the beach, the dog would come with us. Like he would go everywhere with us.
That's so great.
Yeah.
No. And your experience too was...
Mine's very similar to yours.
Yeah.
Like my first 2 dogs were backyard dogs. Like they had a dog area, so we called it. My mom took them on walks. That was it. Like we'd throw our chicken, like our kitchen scraps out the window, and they'd eat it, brother and sister. And then when they passed, I was like, I need a dog in my life. And my dad's like, you're going to leave me in 4 years and I'm going to be stuck with a dog because who knows where you're going to go, if I didn't take the dog. So we did guide dogs instead, which is like year to year. So at the end of it, he could be done and there's no commitment for him or for me because I didn't know what I was doing. But he ended up keeping the last one. So, and he's still alive too. He's like 15 or something.
Right.
Yeah. But similar, where it like went from just like backyard dogs. I'd crawl into their doghouse with them, and read them stories, even though I'm dyslexic and couldn't really read very well. And to like right into like working dogs that aren't mine, that I had to like follow a book by, and then and then Stitch. So
years ago, before I moved from Northern California, I applied to go to the Bergen University of Canine Studies, and I got accepted. And so that was going to be my path, was to go train service dogs.
Cool.
And somewhere along the line, it, sort of changed. And I kind of went into the world of dog rescue instead, which I'm very grateful for. But that was something that I was very interested in.
Very cool.
Yeah. It's funny how it's all connected.
I know. Totally.
Yeah.
Well, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a vet because to me, that was the only profession that was dog related.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, but I don't want to be a vet because I don't have the stomach for it.
Yeah.
I didn't realize like all this other stuff existed that I could do.
Right.
But,
so speaking on that, so you would consider yourself more in dog rescue, or would you not? Or would you say there's like kind of more of a balance of like dog handling or training or whatnot?
I would say more dog rescue, because the dogs that I'm working with, they don't have homes, and I take them for rescues and I work with them.
But it seems like you get a lot of behavioral cases.
Yeah. I mean, I'm getting,
But they're all rescues. Yeah.
medical and behavior. I'm taking sometimes the worst, like the most challenging cases. And I would love to know anyone else doing this, but I've never heard of another like trainer working with dogs also who have neurological issues, like missing parts of their brains or mobility issues. And, when you get into that realm, you better be really creative in the way that you work with dogs, because
very creative.
You don't read about that in books or, it's not like I can call up someone and be like, hey, what's your experience with this?
Yeah.
So that's like very interesting when you get into like when the dog has like brain stuff on top of behavioral issues.
Right.
Yeah.
So kind of on that note of figuring things out, you have like learned from multiple different people as well in regards to like training or handling dogs. What about us causes you to come back?
Because we're so close. We were only 10 minutes away from her this workshop.
Oh, okay. The convenience distance.
Convenience, yes.
No, not
Any
at all.
any trainer who comes within 10 miles of Angela, she's in.
No.
And how did you hear about us?
Through Megan.
Yes,
She was
okay.
like, wow, look at these people.
There's
They
the
walk
whole-
all their
yeah.
dogs with their horse and it's so cool. And so I looked and I was like, wow, who are they? Like, and I just started following you guys on social media. And then I remember I invited you guys to come stay at my house,
Oh,
not
yeah.
even ever meeting you. And you guys, came for a night and I said to you, John, like, I have this dog, she's a little bit complicated. It would be really cool just to watch you work with her. And I lived where it was like freezing. And
Yeah, it
so,
was Tehachapi, I remember it was winter.
and it was raining and it was like icy cold outside. And Cole and I were inside drinking tea, watching John from the window work with this dog. And I was like, damn, he is like dedicated, And so just to see people with that much dedication, and even Cole, like at workshops, having someone hand a dog to you and like your attention is on that dog and what it needs. Like it is never divided. You're never on the phone or talking to other people or anything. Like you guys are like in tune with what that dog needs. And it's rare to find that. It's more so like, what's kind of convenient, like, or let me take a video or whatever it is, but you guys are like there for the dog. And that was like one of the really big things that I saw with both of you is just your awareness and dedication, and your guys' energy feels like very safe to me. And I don't feel that way with everyone. And so I can only imagine the way that dogs feel with you guys. It's very positive.
Right back at you.
Yeah. Thank you.
The feeling's mutual.
Thank you.
Like Cole and I left your place last night and we were just like, it's like a nice little hug.
Yeah.
So,
And like to the way that you like the way that I observe you handling dogs in your care that resonates a lot with us is that even if they're like, not cool with maybe John's coming over and they're like, oh God, you're just so neutral about it. And that's not common either in people that like we interact with, is that you're just like, I'm gonna come and get you and I'm not gonna be rushed about it. I'm not gonna go crazy about it. I'm just gonna be there and help you out. And like,
yeah,
it just,
like the dog that
that's
like
the
took
way.
a swipe at my leg last night. You were just like, okay, yep, let's go over here.
Yeah.
But
it's not like passive.
No,
You're not like, oh, like
Going in
tiptoeing
with
around.
intention, but I'm gentle about it. But I'm
Yeah.
also like, let's not bite anyone who comes to my house.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
There's a firm gentleness to it.
Yeah, which
Yeah,
is what we like. Like that's our jam, is like firm and gentle and
Yeah.
like quiet.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
It's funny that you say that too, because I used to be an incredibly anxious person and the dogs would feel it. Like I talk about this a lot. I would open the door to where I had all my dogs. This was like many years ago when I first started doing rescue. I was young. I was like 21 or 22, and there would be an explosion of barking every time I went into that room because I was such an anxious person and I moved so fast. And I just knew like I was not helping the dogs being that way. And so now I'm like a pretty calm, chill person most of the time.
So because you're pretty, I feel like you're pretty intuitive and you're like connected with feeling energy or feeling people, or probably like the tree outside you might feel. I don't know. I don't know. How, like, what's been your experience with that? Because when you feel dogs, there's a part of it that's self-reflection and like, okay, this is me reflected back at myself. But then there's also a part of it that's like you're feeling the intensity of that dog that you're working with. And when you're attached to them, like you're connected it's like you're like a channel to what that dog is feeling. I don't know if I have a question.
Well, I mean, this is one of the topics that we wanted to talk about, because it's like when I'm working with a dog that's really intense, I'm asking them things, but I'm just asking them to do things. And then I'm trying to get them to respond the way that I'm looking for. But there's not this level of dictation, I guess you could say. And so, at least in my experience, because my ask kind of goes so far and then stops, I wait for the dog to come and respond to that ask. It's not me going over into their space, their territory, and then eliciting what I want through a correction, force, et cetera, or luring them. So there's like this middle space where it's quiet enough for me to where I get to literally feel the dog. And that is really intense with some of the dogs that you work with. And maybe you have the same experience, but I mean, like even when I was working with Merlin, like I had to be on 200%. Because of the level of intensity, because of the level of the lack of margin for error, right? And the same thing when I work with some other really intense dogs. And I guess that experience, I don't choose to live in that. We get those dogs from time to time. I will try to help other people with those dogs. I've handled plenty of them in my days, and like I'm not necessarily seeking it out, right? You, on the other hand, you aren't seeking it out, but you find yourself in these situations where you work to a degree similarly to how we do. And so, do you find yourself in that space where you're like, I have to work, I have to be on 200% for this dog, because if I'm not, something bad could happen. And then not only that, but like the effects that has on you as a handler, as a human being, living in that day after day. Like that to me is what's so intense, is like when you handle these dogs, like we've fostered red zone dogs for like months, 6 months, a year, right? And it's like that those dogs living in your space and your energy and working with them in this capacity, like
not even when you're working with them, but just having their energy around.
Yes, just like, literally having their energy around. Yeah, but because, and this comes back to the original thing, but we don't just put them away and then wash our hands of them
right
for hours on end. We're always aware. So if like they're losing it, we go and help them.
Right.
We don't have a soundproof room where we just are like, okay, or they're far enough away, or we lock them in a facility and then leave.
Well, I think
like it's so much more intimate. And so that effect over time, and that's one of the reasons why we don't do it, because it's that intense.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, when it's in my home, literally every room in my house has dogs in it. And if a dog is, barking or making noise or something, I'm not like, oh God, that dog is so annoying. That's not my mindset. I'm like, I need to go help that dog. What does it need? What am I not giving that dog in order for it to feel that way?
Right.
And it's just, my day is nonstop. Like I am constantly walking, hiking, working, trying to think of how I can fulfill, all of these dogs in my care. And when you talk about like feeling deeply, I mean, the other day, my throat was hurting. Like I had a sore throat, but there's no reason for me to have that. And so later in the night, Freddie didn't want to eat. Freddie is my little tiny chihuahua who's just has a bunch of medical issues. And Freddie was having trouble swallowing. And so for me to like live with, like, that's how deeply I feel these dogs, is that when she has a problem, like, I feel it, my body feels it. And so I have to be really careful about what energy I bring into my home. So if I know it's going to disrupt all the dogs in my house, I have to say no to it. Like, I have to be an advocate for the dogs who I am caring for and working with, because it'll drain everything out of you. I mean, I don't ever clock out from this. It's 24/7.
What about the middle ground? What about that meeting point of like, because I think what could be similar in how we work. Here, I'll wait. You go.
Yeah.
Texting about a dog.
Of course. So I think that meeting point where you're working with a dog and if they're in your space, you're always feeling them. If you're working with them, you're like feeling them. That connection, that space that Jonathan was talking about, that can be super uncomfortable for people to be in. And I feel like some people might use certain things or tools to find a way to not be there for very long and sit in that feeling. Do you find yourself in that spot with dogs that you're working with? Like a meeting spot of energy where you're like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like describing like this abstract.
I know you described it well. I think maybe something to add to that is because like you've worked with so many different trainers, some of the biggest names in the industry, and like you have so many different tools and so many different ways about going about things, right? So when you're in that, like, what is the feeling for you?
That moment is what grounds me the most. Because I have so many dogs with medical needs. I mean, I'm a caregiver first, right? I take on a lot of hospice dogs. It's sad, it's draining. And then I get a healthy dog who needs me in a behavior type of way. And that's when I can kind of clock out from my caregiver mode and go into something that really grounds me, and to know that here's a healthy dog in front of me that I can make progress with. And so everything around me just sort of like slows down and stops. And that's that's something that I need in my life. I don't get that in any other moment besides when I have a dog in front of me who needs like 1,000% of me.
Yeah, and
I love that.
That's the same experience that I have. Like when there's chaos, I get so quiet.
Yeah.
I'm like, it just goes blank.
Yeah.
I almost like black out to a degree.
You do black out pretty much.
I do.
Time goes away, other people go away.
That's why everyone makes fun of me when I start working. Like, oh, here we go. We might be here until morning time. Yeah, because there's such a piece to it, you know. But again, as Cole was mentioning, like, I don't think a lot of people are really comfortable with that. That's why they may come in with like a correction or something to just kind of like get out of it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Or like avoid it too.
Or avoid it. But I also think this kind of bleeds into another part of you. That like when we walk into your space, like you've got like some Om music playing, like you got like some crystals. Yeah. And so I think that there's an element to you that Cole and I are definitely attracted to, we respond to. And it is that like silence that you practice or you try to harness, you know, because like we both meditate. I've meditated my whole life. And I know what that does to me. I know what that has done to me in regards to affecting my dog handling and really kind of maybe growing my ability or my quote unquote addiction to when chaos comes about, it's so easy to just go quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I think that you have that element that you create in your space, you know?
Anytime you've ever been teaching, every time you're like, you ask me a question, you're like, you're always so quiet. Like, what do you have to say? Or what are your thoughts? And it's been every single time.
Literally every single time. Yes.
But I'm just generally a quiet person. And like I go my whole day without saying anything. You know, I'm just home with my dogs. The only time that I do talk is when I need to get their attention. And so it means something, you know.
Yep.
Otherwise, I'm just quiet and I don't say anything.
Which is also not very common in the dog world.
Yeah. Like so many people want to just be constantly talking to the dogs and or giving direction. And like the only time you're gonna hear me call someone's name or get someone's attention is if, you know, something is happening that shouldn't be happening and or I need to slow dogs down or whatever it is. But I want my voice to be important to them. And so I'm just silent with them the whole day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we'll do that. I mean, Stitch is always silent because he's deaf.
I know. It was funny because when I was working a lot with Stitch, it's silent. And then I went into I think I was taking a little bit of time off Oregon Tails. And I came back into the pack and John was like, you have to use your voice sometimes to like teach dogs how to recall and like how to leave it. Like just remember that's like a part of it because he's such a good teacher in silence.
It's so powerful to learn how to work with dogs when you can't use your voice, I feel like. You just have to tap into something that's deeper. And I feel like everyone should try it.
Totally.
Yeah.
For
totally. Like challenge
more
yourself.
than a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, John, I tell this story too many times, but I love it. John would, when I started with Oregon Tails, I think I was 2 years in or a year in. And he just showed up one day and was like, no more voices. And me and his sister Jenny, who were hiking the pack, we were like, for how long? And he's like, I don't know, forever. And then like we of course we're freaking out, like, oh God, how are we gonna do this? What's Bandit gonna do? What's Bruiser gonna do? All that, you know. And like 2 weeks later, we're in the zone, and he's like, you can have your voice back. And we're like, oh, we don't need it. Like it's like having so much time in it where you forget that you know the need for it goes.
We were
away.
working 5 days.
We're working 5 days a week with the pack.
And boarding dogs.
And
so it was
boarding
like
dogs.
14 days of no talking when you're working with a pack of dogs.
Yeah.
Well, and you're so much more in tune when you're not talking to the humans around you and you're just focused on the dogs. And some dogs just really need that.
Yeah.
Totally. I love that you said though about that space being grounding for you, because we have the same experience where like it becomes like a meditation. And like I know that word can be hard for people, but it becomes very peaceful. And it's almost like finding peace in something that's uncomfortable.
Right.
Like you go into it and you're like, that's uncomfortable. But then all of a sudden it changes into something that you really like and it feels really good.
And I feel like you become a very valuable and powerful source for the dog you're working with, because how often do they get to really experience that from humans?
Yeah.
And once they experience it, they're going to want more of it.
Yeah. Can you imagine like when you get someone's 200%, like that's so powerful.
Yeah.
So powerful.
That's so powerful.
Yeah. So one of the topics that's been on like our mind for some time has been this concept of humbling dogs. I've mentioned it in workshops. I've mentioned it to people that we work with one-on-one. And, you know, whether the dogs have anxiety or whether they have reactivity or red zone aggression, whatever the case may be, this concept of humbling them. And it comes in a multitude of from a multitude of different angles. But I think maybe I've mentioned this before in one of the previous podcasts, but I do have this theory. Like, somebody should start a service where they just walk from coast to coast with dogs
What do you
that
mean?
are aggressive.
You just like
on
take a
leash,
bunch of dogs and walk them?
just walk across the
Stop
country.
walking.
Walk across the country. You sleep in a tent, like whatever. They sleep outside. Obviously, you're going to do this like when it's warm and not like in the wintertime.
You do it on the southern
But
part.
yeah, he's just southern. There's a southern route. Yeah. But the element of being in the elements, the value of being in the elements, the rain, the wind, the heat, all of that, coupled with the physical exertion, coupled with the exposure to sights and sounds and random things happening and cats and dogs and deer and all of that. Like,
sounds in the night.
yeah, like, I don't know how long it takes to walk across the country, but let's just say it takes 6 months.
Sean's going to be the first one to do it.
He would. He would do it.
But like 3 months of that, like let's say you made it halfway across the country, like probably quite a few of those dogs are going to be humbled. Because in our experience with bringing dogs into the pack who have issues or
foster dogs.
fostering dogs with behavioral stuff, and like we're talking severe stuff, they don't know, they didn't know what a 9 to 5 was. They didn't know what working in quote unquote a startup is. Like, you go work in advertising like I did, like you work 12 or 15-hour days. That's just easy. That's what everyone should do, you know? And like a lot of these dogs with this behavioral stuff, like they just are strung out and they have too much time on their hands to think about killing cats, to think about their fear of people, to stew and just stare at the front door and just wait for somebody to knock on it,
Right.
or the doorbell to ring, you know? They don't know what it's like to wake up day after day after day and be asked to do things, to have to move through life, to be exposed to so many things. That alone is so potent. So just somebody walking across the country, if you didn't even do anything, you just literally had them attached to you, I guarantee you that would be so potent for 90% of those dogs.
Well,
Then if you throw some like actual attention in there,
right,
it'd probably shrink it down. But just seeing the level of humble, like implementing this element into our existence. Like, I don't know anyone who works dogs like we do. I've never seen it. And I guess I wouldn't do it any other way because I see how potent it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, we don't use corrections. We don't use food. We use praise and like that deep 200% attention. Like when I'm attached to you, like you've got everything of me. You've got every ounce of my being. I'm not thinking about what I ate. I'm not thinking about what I want to eat. I'm not thinking about anything except for what I feel and helping that dog feel better. And so when you remove like corrections or food or whatever, you have this element of time and you have this element of asking the dog to move through life with you and to become one. Like that's the whole point of how we work with dogs. Now, the thing is though, is that can take a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of skill. But that's
dogs.
what we put forth
in
replace of those other ways of going about it, using other tools, corrections, et cetera, et cetera. So,
I mean, yes and no. Like, I think that when I think of that, I think of more severe cases where we're asking that much of them.
Yes.
I mean, I think our days with dogs are pretty big. Like,
Yeah,
we're,
they're-
if even if it's like a boarding member, a pack member that's boarding, they have a full day.
Yes.
Every day is a full day. What I want to add, and you've used this word before with these kinds of dogs that you were mentioning, like dogs that don't know how to work. They have too much time in their head.
Yeah.
Oh, a word you've used before is they feel invincible. Like
Yes.
they've never been tired from exercising or had to think super hard about something. Like they're just invincible.
Problem solve.
Yeah. Or again, just like been tired. Like some of these dogs, like you do a full day and they go to bed and they're like, yeah.
Well, the other thing with that though is like they've been like we've worked with plenty of those dogs who've been drained, but
Right.
they don't have work ethic. That's different.
Right.
That's different than a dog that's just that
Tired.
they've been drained. They know what that possibly is, but the work ethic, that's different.
What would that be? Like they go to bed, they wake up, they work. Then they go to bed, they wake up, they work. Meaning like they're going.
They're going,
They're
but
doing.
like also just the way that you work with them, the things that you ask of them, because they can turn like I was talking about this I think the other night when we were working with that big dog in the park. But they can't, with the way that we work with them, they can't tune us out. They can't get full on food, right? They can't get numb to corrections or e-collars or whatever and just like tune that out. They can't do that. So they have to learn how to continue to move because we can still push them. And of course, like you're trying to build a connection and relationship. So this may sound like, wow, you're just dry. You're working the hell out of dogs. And it's like, you push them, but you're not trying to push them so far off the edge that you're destroying the relationship or the connection that you're looking for. Right. So, but you're trying to be like, okay, you're trying to find that point where they're like, dang, I've never experienced this before in my life. And whoa. And then you're like, okay, we'll stop for the day.
And to have to like mentally go through all of that too and be drained in that way, I'm sure there's so many dogs out there who feel like a great sense of relief from that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they've never felt it before.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes them feel better.
Yeah.
Because again, you can drain a dog, but that's just a drained dog. You can, yeah.
It's almost like humbling and fulfillment live right next to each other.
They do. They totally do.
Because like that dog who just had a job for the day is also fulfilled. I'm like, wow, I feel better. Cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess another way of looking at work ethic, like I look at like dogs who do bite work and dogs who have amazing obedience and all that stuff. Like I'm like, I don't really know what kind of work ethic those dogs have, because what I would be asking them to do, like at some point they'd be like, I'm done. Like, I don't want to work for you anymore. And I'm like, well, let's keep going, and that's that focal point where they're like, whoa, humans have a lot of power and maybe I should respect them if you use it in the correct way. Obviously, if you're using it in a way of building a relationship.
Yeah.
But when I look at those obedience dogs or the bite work dogs or whatever, like in the past, I've looked at them and seen kind of like this facade of like, whoa, those dogs are hardcore. Now I look at them and I'm like, they're really hardcore, but I don't think they might have a lot of stamina, but not work ethic.
Do you think that work ethic comes from more of a level of connection?
Yes, because to me, work ethic comes from that the handler asking the dog to do something and them learning to respect and do that, right? But not from a force kind of way and not from a lure kind of way. It's that It's just you get more on the same page. Because if you don't get on the same page as the dog and you don't ask these things of them, then you're going to have to use those other tools. You're going to have to maintain there's going to be way more maintenance throughout their life. But when you give, and this, I guess, ties into, giving so much to the animal. When you give, like when I spend so much time with a dog, hours working with them, and this is more an extreme case. Don't think that you have to work your dog for hours. But when I take the time and I'm that patient for them, like they look at me different afterwards. And then I do that again the next day, and then again the next day, and they're like, whoa, you're not, number one, you're patient. Number two, you're not going away. Number three, you're not losing your cool. And it's like all these things start to add up. And so, yes, I'm asking them to do things, but coupled with that is the aspect of sharing time. Coupled with that is the guidance, to a better place. So
yeah, it's like like Stitch has amazing work ethic, but he doesn't work like that anymore.
No.
But just the way he looks at you,
right,
when you ask him to do something, he's like so like happy to do it, and he's just like, what are we doing next?
Right.
And not in a way where it's like, what are we doing next? It's like in such a healthy way.
Right.
But he looks at you like so deeply, like you're his world, you know? And that's really cool to be that for a dog.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like I can ask him to work for 4 hours right now, and he'd be like, okay, fine, let's do it. Or I could ask him to work 2 minutes in a month, and that's all he needs. So it's like it goes away over time, and just the relationship is it's there.
So, speaking on this, what is your experience with this element? I know you had one recently.
Yeah.
Maybe you share that, and then if you've had other experiences, because we haven't heard anyone really talk about this, from coming at it from this angle.
Yeah, whether it's work ethic or just a humbling, like a dog that's changed.
Yeah. I almost a year ago, I fostered a Jindo named Hero. And when I had him, he was a very flighty dog and afraid of everything. When he was at the shelter, he wouldn't even eat. He was losing weight. Just everything scared him. He was afraid of, the world. And I fostered him for a few months, and then he got adopted. And he was in that home for 5 months. And within that 5 months, he ran away from that person 2 times. So the first time it took me 5 hours to find him. I hiked in circles with dogs that he knew, and, he came running to me and we found him. And that was the first time. And he had only been gone from me about a week that time. The second time that it happened, he had been gone from me for 5 months. And I went out and I searched for him for a month. He was gone for a month. We kept having all of these sightings. One morning, I got a call at 7 a.m. saying he was getting onto the freeway. And he would travel like 3 to 5 miles within a few days. Like he was on the move most of the time. Yeah, and he didn't have a pattern. Most times when dogs run away, they're going to go back to where they got lost from. Yeah, or they're going to be in like a big perimeter, you know?
Yeah.
And he had no pattern. He kept going to new places. And we knew it was him because we saw footage on Ring cameras where he was, looked like he was looking for food every time. He started to get really skinny. And
Thank God for Ring cameras. They're just like showing the world so much stuff.
Well, it was so helpful for me to see like how fast is he moving?
Right.
How skinny is he right now? Basically telling me what direction did he go in? Was he flighty? What did he feel like? So it's kind of helping me in a way to like keep track of where he was and come up with a plan for when I did see him, because I saw that he was very flighty in some of the videos. I knew he wasn't going to remember me the first time he saw me.
Mm-hmm.
So my plan was that I just needed to be in the same area as him at the same time with my pack with dogs. Some dogs he knew, some energy I chose that was like very playful and happy-go-lucky, and I knew would attract him over. And another dog was just very like neutral and safe, and like everyone feels good around her. So I had to have like a very strategic plan with this dog, because he was also just like very savvy, like he had been living for a month by himself. And I'm sure a part of him enjoyed a lot of that, not being with a human who nurtured any of his insecurities. So when I finally got to be in the same place as him at the same time, it took me about 2 hours to be able to, I didn't want to catch him. I didn't want my experience to be, let me trap you or catch you. I wanted to attract him to me, and I was able to do that. And I used a snare to get a leash on him, and then I leashed him. I used my dogs and food and all of that. He was starving, so I knew, dogs and food were kind of going to be my thing.
A leg snare, right?
Over his neck.
Oh, got it.
Basically like a slip lead with a pole kind of attached to it, and I let go of it, and it goes on like a slip lead.
Got it.
Because he wouldn't quite get close enough to me for me to reach for him. We weren't there yet. So yeah, when I brought him home, as soon as I pulled up, he knew where we were. He started whining and scratching at the crate door, which is something he never did because he was a little bit, shut down. And I let him out into the yard, and I just dropped his leash, and his tail was up. Like, I had never seen this dog with a tail up before. And now he's like life of the party. He gets everyone to play. He's happy-go-lucky, a completely different dog. Had you met him when he came out of the shelter, even after I worked with him, from like now today, you would not know it was the same dog. And I think just his experience of having to go through challenging situations for 30 days straight, and then also having to like actually find his food, it wasn't given to him, just to have to like work for everything, exercise, be drained at the end of the day. Like, he was surviving, and he came back a different dog. And, it sucks that he ran away, but in the long run, like, it was really good for him.
So have you noticed that like kind of humbling concept with other dogs? And like, if so, like what were those observations or experiences?
I don't know if this is the same thing, but I have a Wheaten Terrier named Rosie, who you guys obviously know. And I brought her to your guys' seminar, and she's a very flighty dog. Just came from a bad situation. And so I felt like I could only make so much progress with her in my home. But when I traveled with her and I brought her to a new place, and then to the seminar, and then I was, practicing in a different home, like, everything was different for her. And just to go through, the gentle method with her, everything. When we came home, she was so different. Like, just to put her through challenging situations where I knew we could be successful with it. And then we came home. She was
safe.
Yeah, and safe. And if she needed me, and I was there for her. Whatever she needed in that moment, like, I knew I was there to give it to her. And when we went home, like, there was just so many new things that she did that were positive.
It's so cool because it can happen like either just nature doing the processing alone, in nature, but then also going through that with you and having you hold her hand through it. And then, like you said, go through something that you can succeed in for a handful of days, and then come home. She probably looked at you differently.
Oh, yeah. Like, so much more eye contact now. I can approach her. Like, there's just so many changes that, for a normal dog doesn't seem like a big deal. But for a dog like Rosie, it's huge.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
It's so cool when you can be a part of it.
Oh my gosh. Even just for me to like feel that and to know like this dog ran away from people, had to be trapped, and, you know, she was going to be euthanized because she was so scared. But now, like, I mean, she helps me with other dogs. Like, she has such cool energy around other dogs. Like, I love this dog so much. Yeah.
We do too.
Yeah, for sure.
No offense to all of your other dogs, but she was the one I was looking forward to seeing the most.
Yeah, I asked him. I was like, "Who are you looking?" Or no, you asked me. Like, "Who are you looking forward to?" Like, of your dogs.
Yeah. Of all of them. Yeah. There's a lot to choose
There's
from.
a lot. It's like ordering food from like a buffet or something. Like, what do I want to eat first? Like, who do I want to say hi to first?
I know.
Jeez, there's like so many.
I love you all.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's so good.
So I guess I have another question for you. So what is your, coming back to you having worked with so many different trainers, and that's fairly common in the dog world. It's not common to Cole and I, because we kind of grew up under that rock that we did. But this concept of seeking. So you, in my observation, like you've really found some things in your life that really work for you.
Or created some things.
Or yeah, created some things for sure. Like working with dogs. Like that's something that you're probably not seeking anymore. You're not looking to life for that level of fulfillment. You found it with dogs because of what they gave you. And then secondly, I guess another observation is like the way your house is set up, the energy in it with the crystals, the silence that you try to hold for that space, right? It seems like you've found something there. When it comes to dog handling, what do you think is like a driving factor for people to continue to go to different trainers instead of like finding one and having that, going through that whole process and just having that complete understanding of that a particular technique, you could say? Yeah.
The first thing that comes to mind is like time. I feel like people in general kind of want to find things that work faster, and that's not always the best option for dogs. I feel like, you know, there's some people out there who will say, you know, send this dog to me for 2 weeks and I'll fix them or whatever it may be. And for me personally, I'll never put a time on anything because I don't know how long it's going to take, you know?
Yeah, we're in the same boat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so just to find people who actually like slow down and put in that time, I think is kind of rare. Or, you know, maybe it's some people haven't really found what they love, or because if you don't like something, you probably shouldn't do it with dogs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people out there who'll be like, well, so and so does it, so I need to also. But I think it's really great to like know what feels good to you and the dog, you know, together. And maybe that's a lack of awareness from a human and not feeling things or being aware. It's kind of my thought process on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think awareness is a big element of it. Like for us, doing something that brings you enjoyment is like the most important thing in our opinion.
It's like our mission statement.
Like people who have worked with us, if I kind of caught wind that they weren't enjoying, I was like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Like, go,
Go.
goodbye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Go find something that brings you enjoyment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, even like when we bought the side by side, like there was no reason for us to buy that big side by side, but I was like, this would be really fun and enjoyable to
And
do
the
with the
dogs seem to
dogs.
love it.
And the dogs seem to love it. So I'm like, well, why not?
Yeah.
So like enjoyment is such a big element to us. And I think it should be a big proponent in everyone's life.
Mhm.
And when it comes to dog handling, like finding something that brings you that enjoyment, right? Brings you that enjoyment and also brings your dog that enjoyment.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the funny thing with that though is that it's not like enjoyment. Maybe I'm not sure what your kind of definition of it is, but like enjoyment isn't just a linear path of giggles. Like it's it's like enjoyment encapsulates the good and the bad. Like enjoyment harnesses both of those because those are both a reality in life. But when you enjoy it, there isn't good and bad to a degree. It just is. Does that make sense?
Well, when you were out working in the rain, I'm sure you
Well,
didn't enjoy
exact-
the rain, but
Right.
you enjoy what you do with dogs.
But
Right.
there's a level of like
Right.
blacked outness that happens to me because I'm so ingrained and in tune with what I'm doing that the feeling of being cold goes out the window and I'm just there for the dog. Like to me, like enjoyment transcends the senses, like to where you surrender yourself to the moment.
And if you're working a dog and you're not enjoying it, how valuable of an experience is that really for either of you?
Exactly.
Totally.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Totally.
And exactly.
3 times.
Yes.
4 times. Exactly. And like there are dogs that I'll work with where I'm like, this is really hard work, but that's not enjoyable,
Yeah, it's probably you probably have that experience too, where it's like, yeah, you wake up every day, like there's sacrifice in it.
A lot of sacrifice.
A lot of sacrifice.
But I feel my projection is that you wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. And if I have a dog that I'm a human. I've had dogs that I just didn't enjoy working with. And I need to be really aware of that. Then I'll ask for help. I'll be like, I need help with that dog. Whether it's today, maybe I'm having an off day. I just need to be really aware of that because my days are draining.
Right.
And there are times where, I'm just like, I need help with this dog today. And to ask for help, I think is like a really big thing. And we, as dog handlers, kind of need to be more aware before we hit that feeling of non-enjoyment and know when to kind of take a step back and maybe take a break or whatever it is that you need to do and then step back into it when it is enjoyable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that I think just comes back to like what you were saying earlier about like awareness. Like, you gotta you gotta have that awareness.
Yeah.
Cause then you're really going to get yourself into a situation where things are not enjoyable.
Yeah.
So
I think that's also like, that's in the moment when you're handling a dog, but also like just in life in general, what you take on and like having the awareness of like, oh, this energy, is this going to be right in my home or is this not the right time for this energy before you're committed? Yeah. And then you're like, oh God, what did I do?
And then you have to go through the process of being like, oh God, what did I do? And then you have to write that yourself. Like if you're somebody who's like, I made this decision, then you're like, okay, well, you made this decision, so now you need to buck up. Yeah. And make changes in your life to incorporate this thing.
Yeah.
So like that, yeah.
But when you bring the awareness in, like you're saying, before that moment hits, you're able to maneuver that and like say yes to certain things that make that path.
When I was 22, I'd say yes to everything.
Me too.
Yeah, that dog
Me
wants
too.
to really hurt you. Yes, I'll take it. And like, how stupid of me, but also I didn't really know any better. I was just wanting to help everyone, you know?
Right.
And now, fast forward many years later, I can already say, you know, that dog is not what I'd like to bring home and live with. And I think that's a really important skill to or boundary, I should say, to have with yourself. I know I joke a lot about, you know, not really having many boundaries because I have so many dogs. And, you know, you guys showed up the other day and was like, who's that dog? And I'm like, oh, I just picked it up this morning.
Literally, I was like, oh, who's that one? Like, I don't know. I just picked it up this morning at Starbucks.
With her little pink sweater.
Yeah.
Oh
she's so cute.
But to have a boundary to be like, you know, either that's beyond my skill set or that's going to really disrupt the energy in my house with the dogs or myself. Like, it's just so important.
And like, I can think back during a very long period of time, probably like 10 years, where when I said yes, the challenge of it was the enjoyment, right?
Figuring it out.
The figuring it out
Yeah.
was the enjoyment. And now I'm like, I don't want to say like I don't have fun figuring out those things. My attention's just more in a different zone. But like saying yes, it was not ever overwhelming during that period of time.
Right.
You know? So like, I don't know if you've had that experience. Like, what was when was the shift for you, like with the awareness, you know? Because like for us, like we just have been pivoting in a different direction. But I do remember looking back and being like, damn, like the stuff that I went through and the challenges that I overcame with certain dogs, I wouldn't have it any other way. And like, whether it was doing an entire pack day and then coming back and working with a dog for another 3 hours. Or
just picking up a dog 2 or 3 hours early for free, just so that we could learn and work with them.
To incorporate them in the pack.
Yeah, because we like I did that with Hades.
Right.
She came out 5 days a week. She was a tough dog for me. And so I was just like, can I pick her up 2 hours early? Because I want that extra time to learn from her because I don't get it. Like I need to figure this out.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't do that now.
Or coming back from pack and getting back to the ranch and being like, I'm going to go run the dogs on the side-by-side in like snow for an hour.
Oh, that
and
was
just
so
have
fun,
so
though.
much fun,
That was
you
so
know?
fun.
And this is like after a full pack day.
I know, but they love
And like
we
all
were
the dogs are
just,
like
blissed out.
Yeah. And like, so our energy is in a different place, but it was still so full of enjoyment. Like I think back on those memories and they're so bright. They're full of light,
I
you
think
know?
a part of that is oh frick, I lost it. Oh, that we know what it takes now. Where before we'd bring on a dog and be like, I don't know, it seems kind of challenging. And now we're like, oh, I know what that dog's gonna take.
Yeah.
And I don't have that to give right now.
Yeah, that's a huge.
Is that
Yeah.
Is that kind of an element that helped you, like with your awareness expanded enough to where you're like, okay, I see the writing on that door and like, I can't give that dog what it needs. So let's go to door number 2.
Yeah. I mean, I've never even thought about that until you just said it. But yeah, it's so clear to us now. We've been doing this for so long that I'll see a video of a dog or, you know, whatever it is. And I'm like, I can't give that dog what it needs. So I would be doing a disservice to that dog if I took it on, and a disservice to myself and all the other dogs in my house.
Right.
So yeah, to be able to look at something to be like, I know exactly what it needs, but I can't give it to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. But you learn that through the experience of taking on dogs like that.
When I was 22 and would say yes
Yeah.
to everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I see that in workshops where like I see dogs that show up at workshops and I'm like, I know exactly how long that would take.
Yeah.
And it's a long time. Like the person's really got themselves a project.
But they're in that like ignorant, blissed out place where they're like, I don't know, let's see, where we were, you know, years ago, where you're like, I don't know, like we'll figure it out over time.
Yeah.
There are times like when I see, like with Bruno, the dog that you guys met yesterday,
Yeah.
I'll see a video of them and I'm like, wow, I know that's going to be really challenging. And if that dog ended up with someone who didn't have the experience, they're either going to stay the same or they could get worse, you know? And so that I feel like such a responsibility to be like, I know that I can help that dog, 100% confident. And so I feel like, not that I have to take it, but I want it to be me that that dog comes to, you know?
Right.
And so that's probably why I have so many right now. But that's really
You're just
important
greedy.
to me. Yeah.
You're just greedy you're like, I want to help. So I'm going to help everything and everyone.
I wish there were so many other people who could do what we do.
Like you multiply us.
Yeah, and I mean that in like the most humble way, but like I wish there were so many other people who work dogs the way that we did, you know, who could be helping more because there's such a need for it. Like I don't want it to all be on me and my friends, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, ignorance is bliss to a degree.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Ignorance is bliss.
I remember when I first started in dog rescue, I would see posts on Facebook and it was like the dog's photo and a description. And a lot of them were like, you know, they're going to be euthanized in 48 hours, you know, all these things. And so I would almost get like an adrenaline rush and be like, I have to help that dog. How am I going to get it? You know, it's very unhealthy at that time. I was 22. I was young. But it'd be like the shelter staff can't even go into the kennel and it's a Malinois. And I would take those dogs never even meeting them. And I would have them get into a transporter's car and not bring me one, but like bring me like 3 to 5 of them.
Wow.
And then I lived with them and worked with them and I found them all hames. I never have done a behavioral euthanasia. Like
neither have we.
It's very uncommon.
Yeah.
And if I take a dog in, whether it's a foster, through a rescue, whatever, if it can't get adopted, like it still lives with me.
Right.
I'm like, okay, what do you need? Like, I know I can help you. So that's also why I'm very careful to take on dogs because
they're not going anywhere.
I commit to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like they're with me, you know, once I meet them and you're at my house, like I'm committed. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, Cole and I are the same. Like, we fostered dogs for over, like, I think the most was a year and 3/4.
Year and a half, yeah.
Year and a half.
I would have some for 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that one person comes along
Yeah.
where you're like, wow.
Yeah.
Finally.
Right when you're on the edge, like, oh, are they going to be life?
Yeah.
Are they going to be with us for life? And then here they come.
And they're just like perfect and put in the time and yeah. That's where it's so rewarding.
Oh, yeah.
And you can teach that person to come into this dog's life and hand off that relationship to the new person.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, because as much as like you're saying, it's like, I wish we could have more of us or more people doing this. We all are limited in what we can take on.
Yeah.
And so when you can find that dog a home where it's just maybe the human in them, like the life that you're giving to that dog is so good. It's so full. Like they're entering into this family that you brought them to. And I'm like trying to describe this feeling. like with Negus. Like when they're in that limbo before you commit to them, it's not the best place for them because they don't have someone that's like, this is my heart. Like, here, have it.
Yeah.
But when you can give them that in another person and then they get to experience that forever. I mean, I'm sure, if we kept them, we would do that for them. But to give them another person to do that for them, it's so good. I feel like it's a part of that feeling that is so rewarding.
Yeah, it's so good for me personally, too, to meet other people who will be just as dedicated to that dog as we are.
Yeah.
That's a really important thing for me because I take on so many homeless dogs and they're not easy.
Yeah.
So to find someone who will even take a chance on a dog like that, like that's huge.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And to have dogs like who maybe have never experienced that before.
Yeah.
And then you give it to them and then another person gives it to them. That's just it's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's very special.
Yeah.
For any being to experience that heart value, you know? It's so special, so precious.
Yeah, because it's like you're multiplying. That's multiplying yourself.
Yeah.
It's like finding those homes for those dogs because then it's not that you're taking on more, but you're sharing that more with more dogs.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they get adopted and then I can help another one.
Exactly. Yeah. John, do you have anything else? We need to let Angela go.
Do you have anything else?
Yeah.
I mean, we are kind of like, what do you think about me in particular? Because I don't have a dog.
I look at it that you had such a strong connection to Juno that I feel like it would be weird if you got a dog right away. Because like you and him together, like Cole and Stitch together, it's such a strong connection. And when you love a dog that much and your life revolves around your dog, not the other way around, like you didn't get a dog to fulfill something of yours. I mean, it did,
right?
But you had a dog to fulfill them. I think it's really hard to jump back into that relationship. But what's cool about you guys is you take your time. And so I feel like you're taking your time and waiting for the right dog to come along. I mean, I don't know if you're planning on getting another dog, but I feel like if you do meet the right dog, you're going to be like, that's the one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's really cool that you're, like, that's important to you is making sure it's the right one. Like a dog who's going to enjoy your guys' lifestyle too. You're not just going and choosing a dog based off of what it looks like or whatever it is that, normal people, I don't want to say normal people, but, like the typical person looking for a dog, they're going to go choose like, oh, that dog looks cool, let me get it. Whereas you guys are like, let's wait until we know this dog is going to really love our lifestyle.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
Because we are totally opposite in so many ways, Yeah. Like even Megan.
Like because I have 30 dogs and you have 0.
Yeah. We're 30 times
I don't really
opposite.
have 30, everyone, but
it's like having one soulmate or having quote unquote 30 soulmates.
What's better? I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, having 30 soulmates.
It's amazing.
That's great.
You do have a dog. You have a giant dog.
Yes, I do. Merlin. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
for taking time out of your time.
Yeah, you're busy. I mean, we're literally taking time away from the dogs.
I know.
We realize that, so really...
And we know that we are.
Appreciate it.
I was like, guys, I have this much time. Let's do it. I'm leaving my house right now.
Yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate you and what you do for dogs, and coming to share time with us again.
Yeah.
Like, we're looking forward to the next 3 days and working with you and Ollie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And for just being in our life.
Yeah.
Thank you. The feeling is very mutual.
Good.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Cool.